We all know that the people in the Soviet Union loved their vodka. It wasn't just a drink, it was part of daily life. Vodka was consumed at weddings, funerals, and even at factory shifts. By the early 1980s, the average Soviet adult was drinking the equivalent of 10 to 12 liters of pure alcohol every year. Public drunkenness was so common that police units were assigned simply to pick people up off the streets. Male life expectancy had dropped to just 62 years, one of the lowest in the industrialized world. The Soviet leadership could see that the country was drinking itself to death. Even Yuri Andropov, who ruled for only 15 months in the early 1980s, quietly began experimenting with anti-alcohol measures. Police raided illegal stills, vodka rationing was tested in a few regions, and propaganda posters warned workers that a drunk man was a bad communist. But Andropov's reforms were limited, and his illness cut them short. It was Mikhail Gorbachev who decided to take the problem head-on. In 1985, he launched the most aggressive anti-alcohol campaign in Soviet history. Vodka production was slashed almost overnight, liquor stores were reduced by 2/3, and sales were limited to just a few hours a day. Entire vineyards in Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia, some centuries old, were bulldozed in the name of sobriety. Weddings and public events were restricted to 1 bottle per gathering, and police patrolled to enforce the rules. At first, the campaign seemed to work. Alcohol consumption fell by nearly 40% in the first 2 years. Life expectancy rose by almost 2 years. Infant mortality fell, birth rates increased, and workplace productivity ticked up. Families had more sober fathers at home, and doctors reported a dramatic drop in alcohol-related hospital admissions. For a moment, Gorbachev appeared to have achieved what no Soviet leader before him had done, changing the habits of an entire nation. But the cracks quickly appeared. The Soviet state itself was addicted to vodka. Taxes on alcohol made up as much as 15% of the entire budget. By cutting production, Gorbachev cut billions of rubles in revenue at the exact moment he was trying to reform a stagnant economy. One Western estimate put the losses at over 100 billion rubles, roughly the cost of the entire Soviet defense budget for a year. Ordinary citizens didn't stop drinking, they went underground. Moonshine production soared, filling basements, garages, and even kitchens. By the late 1980s, some estimates suggested that 1/3 of all alcohol consumed in the USSR was illegal homemade samagon. It was cheap, often toxic, and widespread. People brewed beer in bathtubs, distilled vodka in pressure cookers, and bribed factory workers for industrial alcohol. The social response was even harsher. Long queues formed outside liquor stores, with people waiting hours for a bottle. In some towns, vodka became harder to find than meat. Citizens joked that Gorbachev had achieved the impossible. He had made Soviet life even more joyless. Political cartoons circulated secretly, mocking him as the man who stole the people's vodka. The backlash grew, and the results collapsed. By 1988, drinking levels were climbing again, this time with more dangerous homemade alcohol. The vineyards that had been destroyed would take decades to regrow. Legal vodka was scarce, black market vodka was everywhere, and the state budget was in ruins. By the time the campaign was effectively abandoned in the late 1980s, the damage was clear. It had briefly saved lives, yes, but it had also crippled industries, devastated family traditions in wine-producing republics, and cost the government the revenue it desperately needed to survive. The Soviet Union was, in a way, built on vodka. It funded hospitals, schools, and even parts of the military budget. And when Gorbachev tried to take the bottle away, the state discovered just how dependent it was, not only its people, but its economy. In the end, the Soviet anti-alcohol campaign didn't just fail. It became another symbol of a collapsing system, bold ideas, briefly effective, but ultimately unsustainable. And when the USSR finally dissolved in 1991, many Russians would later say, it wasn't perestroika or glasnost they remembered most. It was the years when vodka disappeared from the shelves.